All right, so the goal is to continue on today. I've only gone through part 6, so it actually probably won't take that long. So you'll have some time today to do whatever you've been doing when you've got free time. All right, but hopefully we'll go through 5 and 6 today, 7 and 8 tomorrow, 9 on Thursday, and 10 on Friday. If there's time, 9 and 10, both of them. Next Monday, when you get in here, I'm going to show you how to upload all this. We'll use this project when we're all finished, if we get all 10 parts working. I mean, that's the plan. And I think I told you this already too, but I wanted to say this again. Let's see. So next Monday at 1:30, Shannon will be in here to do course evaluations with you. You've gone through those already. You know what they're about. I don't think I have to say anything else to you about them, okay? Other than, hey, be honest. If you thought everything stunk, then you should say, I thought everything stunk. All right? Hope that's not what you think, but you never know. So, we are right here. So we've gone through the first 4 parts. We're on part 5 right now. Hopefully everybody, either you got the copy that Ethan was nice enough to provide for us, or you got your own working. That should be up right now on the screen. All right. In this particular example, so part 5, we're covering edit forms and templating. Now, what I want to do, kind of like I did yesterday, is I want to walk you through everything. So please don't type anything, because you don't have to do any of the stuff they're showing here. All right. So it says in the last chapter, we loaded the database and displayed it. So in other words, we did the R from CRUD. You were able to read, but you weren't able to do anything else. In this chapter, by the time we get done, you're going to be able to do the C for create, the U for update, and the D for delete. All right. If for some reason we have any kind of problems, I've got this working now through chapter 6, and I'll give you what I've got. All right. So the first thing they wanted you to do was to create a store manager controller. I may have mentioned this yesterday, but the option that they tell you to use doesn't exist anymore. All right. So rather than doing a controller with read-write actions and views using Entity Framework, if you look here, again, don't do this because we don't have to, but if I do add controller, well, the choices you have are empty, controller with read-write, but it doesn't have view, and with view, but it doesn't have read-write. So what I did first when I went through this is I thought, well, that sounds closer. Read-write, it's almost there. So I did that, and you get to a certain point, and then it just gives you an error. All right, then there's 2 or 3 different errors that you can get. And then I went and did the same thing, but used this one and got different errors. So finally I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come in there and just create an empty one. The problem with creating an empty one is I had to go and copy in code and do a whole bunch of stuff that normally you wouldn't have to do. All right? But this is what you can do. Everybody, right mouse click on your controllers folder. The good news is after we do this, you're going to grab one of the files I gave you and you're going to put the guts in there. So this is all you have to do to create this. So right mouse click on your controllers folder, choose add, go up to controller. So right mouse click on the controllers folder, add controller, and choose empty, MVC5 controller empty. Click add, and we want to call this store manager. One word, store manager controller, just like that. All right, and click add. It's a good news, bad news situation. The good news is it creates the controller for you. The bad news is this is it. And there's a lot more that you have to add in. So what I'd like you to do is this. If you take a look up on the screen, please. The folder that I asked you to add, or the one that I sent to you, I should say, I think it's called 1205, if I sent you the right one, 1205 2017. So it's right here. So what's in there? well, if you look on the screen, more than I usually send you. All right? And one of the things that's in here, the one on the bottom is the one that we need. Can everybody see on the screen here? I'd like you to open this up. I don't care if you use Notepad or Notepad++. All right? But just right mouse click on Store Manager Controller. I'm going to open it up with Notepad++. All right? The good news is that you can grab the whole thing because I changed everything, including a big MVC here and a big MVC there. So you can do a Control-A to highlight it all, a Control-C to copy it, then go back over to your program and literally just remove everything that's there and replace it with this. All right. Now you've got the entire controller. Don't worry if it gives you errors and stuff over here. We're not completely done yet. All right. But what I'd like to do, I got this same message, this thing with artists. We're going to have to make some changes. There's even mistakes that I found in this series of articles. If you follow their steps, I don't know how the heck you can make it work because they've actually left some stuff out. All right. Now, am I that smart that I know what they left? No, but I tried a bunch of stuff until I figured out what it was. All right. So just for a couple minutes, let's not put that aside, but let's talk about what's in here. All right. We now have a Store Manager controller, as it says, with a local entity framework variable. All right. If you look up on the screen here, you'll notice if you look, we do have a Store Manager folder now. Everybody see that? That's the good news. The bad news is that it doesn't have any of the files that would be in it if we were able to create the controller the right way. The good news about that is I've given you those files. We're going to put those in a couple minutes. Before we do that, I want to take some time to go over what's in here. All right. So I've already given you the create.cshtml, the delete.cshtml, the details.cshtml, the edit.cshtml, and the index.cshtml views. I've given you those. That's in the stuff that I sent you today. All right, that's the good news. The bad news is you have to listen to me explain them. All right, I don't think it'll take that long, but I'd still like to go over it for at least somewhat completeness. All right. So, as it says, this new Store Manager class will allow us to complete the different CRUD operations. All right. Now, I thought, hey, look, they said modifying a scaffold view. And you may or may not be aware of this if you look up on the screen again, please. But when you go to controllers and you right mouse click and you choose add, another thing you can choose is new scaffolded item. And I thought maybe I could do that instead of having to do an empty controller. Well, that got me a whole different set of errors. So finally I said, you know what? The hell with it. I'm creating an empty one, and I'm going to make it work by copying in the code they give me and whatever code I have to add. All right? So that's kind of what we've got and where we are. So don't worry about modifying the scaffolded view. Just forget all that's in there. The idea is this. You're going to have this code in there already, but if you look right there, this is what they want you to add. And basically, it's a table that's going to present all the stuff you need. Yes?
I read about some news about that exception that you did.
Which exception?
The
one that I got?
Add the controller, the Store Manager controller.
Oh, okay.
It has to be away from the big file, and the connection has to be added.
Okay.
The provider name is like
yes.
.data.html
yes.
file.
But with some of those errors, what they tell you to do is they say, take that line, comment it out, add it, and comment it back in again. Guess what? You run it, you get the same error. All right? Believe me, like I said, I probably tried 25 different fixes between doing this 3 different ways, and I couldn't get anything to work. There were all sorts of issues with it. So this is what we're going to have in just a minute. They said the modified code will appear as follows. We'll look at that in just a couple minutes. All right, this is what I wanted to look at, though. This is where we will get to in a little bit. If you look up on the screen here, The weird thing I don't understand about it, and I don't know if it's because we haven't gone further in this or if this is the way that it's set up, that when you bring it up for CRUD like this, it shows you everything, not just the rock ones. It shows you everything that's in the database. Did you hear what I said? Then what you're going to be able to do eventually before the end of the period today, if you click Create New, it's going to bring up an HTML form. It'll have a drop down in there for genre. It'll have a drop down in there for artist. And you'll be able to fill those in, and you will have to add the price and the title, etc. Then in chapter 6, we're going to make a couple of those fields. We'll use those data annotation things that we've looked at before. And with those data annotations, we will basically do the same thing as like we used to do when we used the validation controls. All right, so we will get all that done today. Not only that, when you first do this, please look up on the screen here. When you first do this, I think the first one they have you do is edit. So just so you know, once we get here, if you click details or if you click delete, they aren't going to work until you put the code in. All right? That said, yours will work because you'll have all the code if you put all of it in at once. This is what we're going to get then. So when you want to add a new record, this is how you'll do it. You'll notice that you get a drop down for genre. You get a drop down for artist. What we do too is we set these up so when these first come in right here, the drop downs, they're empty. There's nothing in there whatsoever. It's like doing a state field where you don't have any state chosen whatsoever. All right? And every field that's in here, except for I think the album art URL, so these first 4, they're made required. That's what we'll do in chapter 6. In addition, if you look up here, the title has to be no more than 160 characters. That will work if you do it the way they showed it in the handout, the way I'll show you. And it will work because I tried it with 161 and it broke. The price has to be between 1 cent and $100. Those are arbitrary values that they picked. If you don't like those, you could, if you said, hey, no album's going to be worth more than $29.99, you could change that then. All right? Now, the one thing I didn't do was this one, because what they said for the album art URL, it was a maximum URL size of 1,024 characters. I didn't have it in me to put in 1,025 to see if indeed that worked. But I took for granted that since this worked at 160 for the title, that would work at 1,024. All right? Okay. Now, when we come in here and we click details, this is what we're going to get. Okay? Genre, artist, title, etc. So it's going to have all this stuff in there. And when we want to delete it, when we first do it, it'll look like this. Everybody see what it looks like there? The problem is the author says that's too much text. So what he has you change it to is from, are you sure you want to delete this? It'll say, are you sure you want to delete for those about to rock, we salute you. So in other words, it puts the message in, are you sure you want to delete? But instead of the word this, it puts in the title. Okay, so we'll get to that in just a bit. All right, so before we go on, the author says, hey, let's look for a second at this store manager controller. What I did, just so you know, what I did is I didn't even trust what they had here. I didn't even trust this. So I went over to their completed copy and I copied everything. And the other thing, and Brady, I don't know if this didn't have to do with that error that you had yesterday, but I will tell you something. Remember how I've told you in the past, I just copy something directly like from here, etc., and throw it in there? Today it stopped working. What I had to do was I had to take it, copy it from here into Notepad++, grab it from Notepad++, then copy it in to Visual Studio. Then it worked. Now, why is that? I don't know, but that's the way it was. All right? So, when we look in here, a couple things when we start. All right, we have to make sure we're using our MVC, and ours is already going to be in caps, the capital MVC. If for some reason on yours you didn't use my naming construct, you know how I use this? I put it in like this. MVC Music Store. Well, let's assume Tiffany, for example, did this. Well, mine, all the ones you're going to copy in, suppose you did it that way. So if you didn't, you will have to manually go in those files and change this to this. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Otherwise, you're going to end up with errors when you do it. And the error that I was getting this morning is it just didn't recognize stuff. And that's, like I said, that's when I took it out and I copied it from one place to the other, then it worked. So we talked about this the other day, right here. This is going to create our new music store entities. That's that particular thing that looks like this. That one. Okay. We're going to have to add, I always thought it was funky in here that we've got albums. We've got genres. What are we missing? Artists. And they never tell you to add that, except it doesn't work unless you do. All right? So we'll add that a little bit later. So don't worry about it right now. It'll be fine. All right. So they tell us to come in and do this. You saw some of this kind of stuff yesterday. So it says, the index row retrieves a list of albums, including each album's reference genre and artist. You saw this stuff yesterday where we wanted a listing based off of, we wanted them in alphabetic order based on genre, then inside of there in alphabetic order based on whatever, title or artist or whatever it happens to be. All right, and that's what they're telling you to do right here. All right, so you'll notice this is just the index. So this is the one that will come up when you run the store manager by default. Does that now make sense to everybody? So if I go in and after the after the port name, if I put / store manager, or if I put / store manager / index, this is the method that will run. All right. And then there's going to be a details, and it says, hey, remember when you did this back for the store controller? This is exactly the same thing. Show us the details. All right. Again, you'll have all that. You've already got this stuff in yours. All right. Then it says we need some action methods. Well, this is where I deviated a little bit from what the author had. So if you go and look at yours, the one that we just added, the store manager controller. All right. Again, this is where if you're getting an error right there on that line that's in blue, then probably with yours, you didn't use a big M, a big V, and a big C. So that's one place where you'd have to start changing these things. You'll know because when you save it and you build it, if you look in your error list that's right here, after you do that, if your error list, notice I've got that in there now. I'm not worried about that. That's going to get fixed in just a bit. All right. Okay. So this is what the author just said you have to add. This is what we just looked at. So this is when we run it, that's what's going to come up by default. All right. Well, we also want to be able to bring up the details, and we also want to do a create. All right. We're actually going to do a couple different creates. Anybody remember? I'm asking a question from a ways back. What do you think is the difference between this and this? What's the difference between those two? Once is get, once is post. No, I mean, what is actually the difference? Go ahead. Yeah, well, yes, basically. But this says all you want to do is display. This says you want at least the ability to modify. So when we talk about CRUD, remember, CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. Well, the R right there, this, the read, that's this. Does that make sense to everybody? And the create, the update, and the delete, that's post. All right? So if all you want to do is display something, it's a get. But if you want to display something with the idea that you also want to at least potentially let the user change it, it's a post. All right. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is if you look up here on the screen, all right, and we're gonna fix this in just a minute because that's just bugging me. So I'll show you how to fix that in a second. All right. But when you look up here, notice that this is what they tell you to do in the book. They tell you to type in, this is one of those data annotations that you can put in. HTTP post in brackets. They don't tell you to put this one in. The program works fine even if you leave out HTTP get. You want to guess why it still works? That's the default. Exactly. But I still think, then why not put it in? All right, for no other reason, it provides some extra documentation. All right. Remember this thing? We talked about this before. We talked about the view bag the other day. It's coming back. All right. And the view bag is basically, for lack of better words, it's kind of like this area in memory that you can use to hold anything. You give it a name and boom, it's available to the program then. So we're going to grab the genre ID. We're going to get it from here. So we're basically going to get it from our drop-down list. And then we're going to throw it into the view bag. All right. And we're going to do the same thing with the artist ID. Those are those two drop-down lists that we're going to have. All right. Let's see if we can fix this thing that's in here right now that's giving us this error that's right here that says it doesn't recognize artists. All right. What I'd like you to do, please, is open up this file, your music store entities.cs. And I want to make sure I'm giving you the right line of code. So it's just literally a line of code that we have to put in there. Where is that? It is here. All right. Everybody found this file? It's musicstoreentities.cs, which is under your models folder. All right. Then go to the end of that file right after your second DB set and add this. So add the line that's now in blue. And the reason is it's looking for that artist information, but since it's not listed there, it doesn't know what to do, and that's why you're getting those error messages. All right? So after you've done that, a nice thing would be to do a save all. Now I'm going back to my store manager controller, and notice what's not there anymore. Those underlines. All right? So here's our create stuff. Again, this is going to allow us to come in and do creates. After the create stuff is the edit. This is going to allow us to come in and do the edits. After that is the delete. So that's going to come in and allow us to do the deletes. All right? The thing is not complete yet, but just so you have a clue as to where we are. All right? Those are the three create, basically those are the action methods for creation, for updating, and for deleting. And they talk about this, we talked about it a little bit before, but they talk about some of the stuff with get and post right there. Now, you may not like my explanation of a get versus a post. I try to look at it almost in database terms, where a get is like a select, where you can't change information with a select, and a post is like an insert or an update or a delete, where you can potentially change information. That's the way I look at it. You may or may not agree with that. All right. So next, it says passing information to a view using ViewBag. And then they say, again, the ViewBag is just something the system recognizes, so it's something that you can use. It's a dynamic object. That's actually pretty important. That means that if you want to or need to, you can have the ViewBag set things as the program is running. Everybody hear that? Because that's pretty important. All right. So while the program's running, you could, for example, ask for some user input, take that input, and throw that into ViewBag properties. That's really what we're doing here with the create. Now, they do mention here that when you use this, there's two statements that are like this. All right. In fact, if you go and look up on the screen here, and I come back to these two lines that are right here in our edit routine, those two lines. All right. The author says with those two lines, he explains exactly what's happening with those two lines of code. Because again, it's one thing for you to sit there and either have me give you code or you type it in. It's another thing. I mean, to me, this is pretty cool if we can get these last 4 lessons to work. And if we can upload those to the net and have it where you've got a working copy of MVC 5, all right, music store. I think that's pretty good. And that's something that I think that you should take pride in and you should put onto your portfolio. All right. But that said, somebody says, "Oh, that's really good, Ethan. Tell me about it." And I don't know. He just gave us some code in class and we put it up there. That's not going to sound very good. So it's important that you take the time to look at this stuff. I think I said this to you the other day. If we get everything done on Monday, as far as being able to upload this stuff, if we get everything to work, guess what? We're done. So what about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week? You know what I'd like to do? If you don't have any problems, I'd like to give you start going into Java with you. All right? But what that means is you will, if you want to, you are then able to uninstall Visual Studio on your system. Please, if you do that, make sure you've got copies of all the code you've created this semester. If nothing else, hopefully you still have room on that flash drive I gave you. All right, a lot of you have been putting your homework on there all semester anyway. But what I'd like to see you do would be to take at least to take the 3 projects we've done for MVC, the to-do list, the Rankin project, and this project, have that out there. And then ideally also your second test where we did the loan thing, because that's an example. It doesn't have databases unless you decide to put that in there. But you've got then a web form application and you've got 3 different MVC applications. And ideally, all 3 of them will work, or all 4 of them will work. All right. I think, like I said, and that's just me, but hell, that's me. I think it's pretty impressive. All right. So what we have in here is we're saying, okay, in this view bag, we're going to have a property that we're creating called genre ID. And we're creating a select list. And the select list that we're creating will be genres. All right. The value that we want to basically get is the ID. But the name we want to show is name. So in other words, those 10 genres, if number 1 is disco, then this is what we care about is the number 1. But that's not going to help a person. If they see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 in there, that's not going to help them nearly as much with a drop-down list of seeing disco, rock, reggae, etc. All right? Because people work off stuff like that. They don't typically work off numbers. And even if you say, well, I could do it, I believe you. But what if instead of 10 genres, we had 1,000 genres? Could you just like this tell me what genre 567 was? I sure as heck couldn't. All right. So as it says, we do the create, and notice there's not much to it. All right. That's for the create. And then we're going to end up, they mention in here, they talk about the fact that we're using this this HTML helpers list. If you decide that, okay, you've all graduated, and Amin applies for a job as an ASP.NET programmer. He's not even sure why he's doing it, but he applied for a job as an ASP.NET programmer, and he gets called in for an interview. Okay, I would definitely recommend that you go out and do a lot of things, but one thing is to go and just type in ASP.NET HTML Helper, hit enter, and what you're going to find, notice there's a thing on Code Project, and that's not bad, I've looked at it, but I'd go down to here under the Microsoft Developer Network and look at all the different helper classes. if you're going to take and have the wherewithal to apply for a job as a programmer, especially if it's an MVC programmer, they're going to expect you know what this stuff is. I don't mean that you memorize everything that's in here. I don't mean that at all. But if they ask you, if they start talking to you about HTML helpers, they'll assume you know what those are. All right? And basically, they're a bunch of pre-written hypertext transfer protocol methods that have been pre-written for you in C# to make your life easier. They take common operations, and somebody has created code that does it for you, so you don't have to write it yourself. All right? And that's exactly what they say in here. Okay? Now, it says here, with this could have been put on one line. They didn't, but let's do that. Let's put it on one line so you can see all of it here. All right. So this is a call to an HTML helper. It's a call to the drop-down list HTML helper. And it says it needs two things to display. All right. It says, number one, where to get the list to display. So it knows it needs to display, it needs to grab the genre IDs. Okay. But this is what it starts with. String.empty is the same thing as saying the name of the string equals double quote, double quote. Everybody hear that? So if you have a string that's called my string, yes, you can't, because that's the accepted version way of doing that. All right. I don't know if it would take double quote, double quote. I didn't try it. But what I'm saying is if you wrote string name and you wanted to initialize it to the empty string, you do that. You know that. We've done stuff like that before. But you could also say string name equals string with a big S dot empty. Both of those do the same thing. All right. I agree with Ethan. I mean, I would use that one because it's a lot less work. All right. This is the way they showed it here. You can go back if you want to and try changing yours to double quote, and see if it works. All right. All right. Handling the posted form values. So again, this is create. Now we've created it. What the heck do we want to do with it? So you put something in all those fields. So what do you want to do? Well, please take a look up on the screen here. In English, the stuff that you see in blue there says, okay, I'm going to attempt to add this to that album. Okay, and save the changes. And then I want to return and show my index because that'll show me the list and it'll let me see whether or not it was added. So this right here means success. I checked all those fields that were in that form. They all were fine. In this chapter, we don't do any validation. Be careful of that. Okay? If it comes up and it's going to ask you a price, if you leave it blank or you put none or you put something that's not numbers in it, it'll work until you go and try to save it because then it's trying to write it to a database and then it'll break. All right? If it doesn't work, it's going to go back and just show, basically it's going to bring your form back up again, for lack of better ones. All right? So that's what that's doing. And it says, redisplay the form with validation errors. Not now, because in chapter 6 is where we start to add the validation errors. All right? We do a little bit of validating in here at the end, but not too much. All right. Then they talk about, this is another thing that you should at least look at and try to understand. We talked a little bit about model binding when we were still using the book. All right. So it says here, the controller action is processing a form submission that includes a value for the genre ID and the artist ID. While it's directly possible to access these kinds of form values, the better approach is to use model binding capabilities built into ASP.NET. It says when a controller action takes a model type as a parameter, if you don't, sometimes giving it less information is better because with model binding, the system tries to figure out what it is you're trying to do. And most of the time when the system tries to figure out what you're trying to do, most of the time, it guesses correctly. All right, and that's what they're talking about in here. All right, validating the model, it says the model is validated with a simple call to model state.isValid. There's a mistake there. That shouldn't say model stat. It should say model state. All right, so if it works, it adds it and it saves. That's it. If it doesn't work, it just redisplays the form. All right. Now, we're not going to run this yet. It says run it and see if it works. Before we run it, we've got to add the index.cs HTML and all the other ones. Did you hear that? So we have to go in and add, I think it's about 5 files. Let me double check. We have to add these files right there. You've got these, but we want to add create.cshtml, delete.cshtml, details.cshtml, edit.cshtml, and index.cshtml. It shouldn't matter at all what order that you add these. You probably can. All right. I wouldn't even recommend doing it like that because you're right, we can. You're right. So come over here, go over to your views menu. I'm going to close my controllers menu in my models folder. Go over to views, but we want to make sure you're in the view for store manager. If you don't, it's going to be screwed up. All right. So with that highlighted, right mouse click on it and choose add existing item. And then you've got to iterate or work your way over to here. And as Ethan said, and he's right, we can highlight all 5 files then and click add. These are the 5 files that I gave you today. So far, we have changed and made the add with the music store entities. We added the changes for the store manager controllers. We did those 2. Now we're doing these 5. All right? So if you've got all those highlighted like that, just click add. And there they are under store manager. All right? Now, what we should all do is click our Save All disk icon over here, do a build solution. After you do that and it comes back, check your error list to make sure it's empty. If you got a thing up there that says error list and there's stuff in it, something went wrong. Again, if you say, well, geez, I've got errors, what went wrong? It depends on the error. You can't always just double click on the error if you have one and it'll try to show you where it is. All right, but I'm assuming you didn't get an error, so I'm gonna actually bring up this index.cshtml that I just added, right mouse click on here, and choose View in Browser. Now, it's actually a little bit too big. That's why it looks like this. So if I shrink my screen size down a little, there. And if you look, I'm going to click Create New. All right? So I'm clicking Create New right there. There's my genre. Notice, there they are. And I'll just grab one. I'll grab Metal. All right? Artist, Amy Winehouse. Kind of hard for her to come out with a new album, but you get the idea. How about this? Greatest hits ever. You can put in whatever you want. For a price, I'm going to put in here $15.99. And just so I have something in here, I'm going to put in Rankin. All right. Why she would ever have a new album anyway, and why she would be linking to Rankin, I don't know. I don't care. You can leave that field blank if you want to. So I put that in. I'm going to click Create. And now I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and see what I've got there. Well, looky here. Metal, Amy Winehouse, greatest hits ever, etc., etc. Okay? Now I can click the Edit button, and I can go back in, and if I change it, I don't want it to be $15.99. I want it to be $19.99. It's greatest hits ever, volume 2. I don't know. And we'll say here, I'm just going to change it to alternative and click, go down to the bottom, alternative, volume 2, 1999. One sec. I click details, there's my details, and if I don't want it anymore, I can go down to the bottom and I can click delete, and it says, are you sure you want to delete the album Greatest Hits Ever Volume 2? Now, hopefully all that worked for you, all right? And if you got an error, we'll try to work on it. Like I said, if for some reason yours doesn't work and we can't figure out the error, I will give you mine by the end of the day, all right? You getting there?
Yeah, well, I don't have any errors, but when I try to run it in Chrome, it comes up with connection is unable to launch the IIS Express web server.
Try run. See if you can read. Do you have IE on your machine?
What does it mean, IIS?
No. IIS is a built-in That's the built-in Microsoft server you have on the system. All right. But if you look up here where it says Google Chrome, if you click down, it shows you all the different browsers you have. I'd try to run it on something else. I don't know why that would happen. I believe you, but I don't know why it would happen. No, well, was it? Okay, then I'm not sure what it is. We might have to Google the error, unless you know what it is. And sometimes it can be as simple as rebooting too. All right, that's what I try first. Is I'd save everything, but I'd wait until the break because I know how slow your machine is. Okay. So when you look here, all right, we've gone through, we've handled the create, we've handled the edits, we've handled the deletes. All right. Now, I'm just jumping over a lot of this stuff. And in my humble opinion, if it's worth you knowing, you're going to read it. I showed it to you. I demoed for you what it'll look like. Think about what's happening here. If you click delete, the system has to go in and it has to find the records you're currently working on. It's got to grab that title and say, do you want to delete, and give you that title. And then if you say, yes, you want to delete it, it literally has to make the delete. Does that make sense? If you choose edit, it's the same thing, but rather than removing something, it should show you the entire form again. Do you notice what you're not being shown here? You're not being shown any IDs. You notice that? Why? Why aren't you being shown any IDs? It's even more basic than that. You're right. You don't need to see them. You should change them. Out of sight, out of mind type of an idea. All right. So the only thing that's left in this particular chapter is we're going to use an HTML helper to truncate text. And what the heck does that mean? You've already got it. All right, you put it in already, but I want to show it to you anyway. All right, so if you would go to your Store Manager controller and go up to the very top. It's not the Store Manager controller. Thought it was. Let me double check. Oh, it's your index.cs HTML file. Sorry. So if you would go to your index.cs HTML file for your Store Manager view and go up to the very top. This is what we're adding right there. All right. You see it in blue, and I'm going to put it to you in English. All right. We're going to have, well, you don't have to make those changes either because I made them for you. Right now, this can get funky because what we've set aside is 25 characters for the title. Did you all hear that? Some of the titles are bigger than 25. That's why when I started mine, did you notice how it was all funky and I had to shorten the screen? I had to do that because we didn't, because of truncation. All right. This in English says if the length of your title, and it's going to be both the title and the artist. If the length of the title of the artist is less than or equal to 25, show it all. Otherwise, show the first 25 characters followed by dot, dot, dot. That's all. That's what this does. And in order for that to work, we had to also, in the same file, go down and change these two things. See how they look different than the other two? We told it that rather than just doing a display for with model item genre name, which shows the whole thing, we're saying item artist name, but only display truncate after 25 characters. All right? And again, a couple of you are kind of looking, what? But if you run it, if you look at the run, where is it? All right? I'm just going to go back to the list here. Notice what we have. See that dot, dot, dot? That's all that's doing. All right? And if you had, for some reason, somebody had an unbelievably long title, you've got two choices. You could either work to word wrap it, so it would be on 2 lines, or 3 lines, or whatever, or you could do something like this. This is what the authors decided they were going to do here. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good, bad. I don't care. All right? So, one more thing to do for this chapter. If everybody here would please do this, and that is, with this up right here, go over to your Team Explorer, all right? Click Changes if you have to. Go back to that the stuff I've copied over for you. Find the Lesson 5 comments, copy them to the clipboard, and paste them in here. So these are the comments that I added. Again, I'm not saying they're fantastic comments or anything, but these are what I added. Number 1, added the Store Manager controller. Number 2, added the Store Manager create.cshtml, delete.cshtml, details.cshtml, edit.cshtml, and index.cshtml views. Number 3, modified the Store Manager index method. Number 4, looked at the Store Manager control in detail. Number 5, added Store Manager controller index and details methods. Number 6, learn how to pass info to a view via ViewBag. Number 7, learn how to use the HTML drop-down list helper. Number 8, handle the posted and getted form values. Number 9, utilize model binding. Number 10, tested, create, edit, and delete for forms. Number 11, learn how to use the HTML truncate helper. Again, if you don't like my comments, put your own in there. All right? And then once you've got those in there, click your commit all. And again, if we go to actions down here and to view history, you'll now see what we have in there. All right? So that was lesson 5, that was lesson 4, etc. So we could revert back if we wanted to or needed to do so. All right? It's 1:28. Let's come back at 1:45. My guess is this next part will take no more than a half an hour. So you'll have 2 hours today to work on other homework or whatever it is you might want to work on. Did you go back into the music entities? No. Yeah. Did you go back and do the save and then go build the solution first? controls. You just double click one or the other. Okay, what I'm going to tell you is going to sound weird. Do a Control A, Control X. All right. Now, open up Notepad++ or something else. Once that comes up, just do a Control V to paste that in there. All right, now do a Control A, Control X. Go back to your other file and in there. Now paste that back in. Now save it again, rebuild it again, and run it again. And I'm taking for granted now that you've got the capitalization in there that we showed you. So it's then, okay, then, oh, still getting that. Try to just double click on that last one. Did you make this lowercase album like that? Did you do that? Oh, look. What file are we in again? Right there?
I'm in Scrum.
All right, let's look at here.
I gotta go through and change it.
Okay. Is this one of the ones that was marked an error on yours? Which lines were on yours? I think it's these here.
66 and 50.
Okay. Is this exactly right here? Let me make this a little smaller. Is this what yours looks like for 66? Capitalization and everything. It is. All right, what's the next line?
56.
That is 66. 82, you said? All right, you have that?
Yeah, but mine, I said mine was genre.
That would break it. You saved yours as singular instead of plural?
Yeah, and throughout my entire program. So, but mine is, it's not genre that's wrong. It's the
Okay,
artist.
okay. All right. And what's the other line? I think that was an earlier one. What was the first one? It was like 16 or something like that?
55.
55? Okay. All right. And the last thing is, I know you said it and it looked like it was okay, but this file of music store entities, this is what yours looks like, including capitalization. It's not working at all? Alright.
I don't know why. It just like gives that error, like, but it's not an actual error in the code, which is so weird to me.
Okay. What was it?
In one file, I didn't put a C in the artist, but I put one of them else file. In my albums.cs file, I didn't have a C in artist.
Oh, well, it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
So yours works now?
It should.
Good. Dominic, does yours work? Alright. Amin, does yours work? Ethan, yours works? I think Evan's works, right? Alright. Ivy, does yours work? Good. Valerie said hers works. If here, Tiffany, just try that and see if it works on yours then. It's called like Ethan's MVC Music Store copy or something like that. I don't know. You'll know what it is. The other two are JavaScript folders. So. Evan, Ethan said yours works, correct? Okay. Brady, I take for granted yours works. It all works?
Yep.
Good. Then you've got your choice. If this one works, you can just continue on with that one if you want, or whatever. That's up to you. I guess the only thing that's sort of bad about that is, and I'm not criticizing him, but since he put his name on there, you know, if anybody's ever able to traverse their way through your site, you know, I don't think they can do that though. That's because like I can't go into somebody's website and find out their folder structure
Yeah.
usually. So
What is your error using? You're unable to launch the IFS stuff. That's what he's saying to do.
well, I just gave her mine. She's gonna try it and see if she gets the same error or not. And if she doesn't, then she can just give the flash drive to Dominic and he can work from that one.